Okay, today we're just going to build on what we have learned already. So I have an opener for you. I'd recommend that you hit pause in a second, try and work it out, and then hit play and see how you did. So we want to solve this triangle. Solving a triangle means find all the lengths of the missing sides and all the measures of the missing angles. So in this problem, we have one missing side and two missing angles. So let's start with the side. Because this is a right triangle, hopefully you remember the Pythagorean Theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are the two legs and c is the hypotenuse. Now it just so happens this one's labeled b, but you can set it up any way you want. So to figure out what b is, I'm going to set up the Pythagorean Theorem. 27 squared plus b squared equals 45 squared. So then I'm going to, now there's a couple ways to handle this. I don't want to grab my calculator yet. So what I'm going to do is subtract 27 squared from both sides without punching it in. And then I'm going to take the square root of that to figure out what b equals. And now I'm going to grab my calculator and punch all of this in at once. If you want to do it as you go, that's fine. I just think it's less work to punch it all in at once. So I'm going to type in second, square root button, 45 squared minus 27 squared, and I get 36. So that's my answer. So b is equal to 36. So that's this missing side. So I fill that in. Okay, now we want to find angles. So let's find angle A. So just like we've done from the beginning, let's mark angle A. Let's label all the sides. The hypotenuse, the opposite leg, and the adjacent leg. Now because we calculated the 36, the opposite leg, I tend to not want to use that in my next calculation just in case I made a mistake. So I want to use the 27 and the 45. If you want to use the 36, go ahead. You should still get the same answer. So if I'm going to use the 27 and the 45, that's the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So if you remember, SOHCAHTOA, the CAH, the cosine, uses the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So I'm going to want to use the cosine function for this one. So I'm going to write cosine, if I can figure out a space to write it, here we go. Cosine of the angle, which I don't know, is equal to the adjacent leg over the hypotenuse. Now we want to find angle A, so we have to undo the cosine. Can't divide by the cosine. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the inverse cosine. I've showed you this before, of 27 over 45. And that's going to give me the angle A. So I want to make sure that I'm in degree mode, and I am. So I'm going to press second cosine 27 divided by 45. And this will tell me the angle, whose cosine is 27 over 45. So 53.13 degrees. We'll round to the nearest tenth. It didn't specify in the directions. So 53.1 degrees. It's important to realize that you're getting an angle for this. Understand if you're getting a number, which represents a side, or if you're getting an angle. Now, I could set up the same idea to find angle B using sine or cosine or tangent, but I already have two of the three angles in the triangle. And I know all the angles in the triangle add up to 180 degrees. So I'm just going to subtract the 53.1 and the 90 from 180 degrees, and that'll give me what I'm left with. So that should give me 36.9 degrees. Okay, so that's how you solve those. Alright, so one last thing I wanted to show you is that there's three different types of equations that you can get in all the problems we're doing. Notice, in the first one, in the blue one, x is missing for the angle. In the second one, x is missing in the fraction, is the numerator. And in the third one, the red one, x is what's missing, and it's in the denominator of the fraction. So we solve each of these a little bit differently. So for the first one, that's like the opener, we need to find the angle. So we need to undo the sine function. So we're going to do the inverse sine of the opposite side. So we're going to do the inverse side of 4/5. So let's use this. What am I doing? You'll see in a minute. Be patient. Okay, so I'm going to grab the calculator and clear. I'm going to do the inverse sine, so second sine of 4 divided by 5. By the way, if you don't have a calculator at home and you're trying to use one on the iPad and you can't figure out how to do the inverse sine or cosine or tangent, I just put a video in last night which will kind of help you figure out how to use a calculator on your iPad. Alright, inverse sine of 4/5, 53.13. Coincidence? Maybe not. We'll talk more about that later on. Let's just go to here. Smile. Okay, so let's get rid of that. And let's shrink this down. There you go. Alright, so we found the missing angle and it was 53.1 degrees. Let's write that in there. Approximately. Okay, how do we solve the next type of problem? Here x is over on the right side in the numerator, so we need to get rid of the 17. Well, instead of dividing by 17, we do the opposite, and we're going to multiply both sides by 17. So we're going to wind up with 17 times the sine of 37 degrees equals x. And once again, grab our calculator, and we're just going to punch in 17 times sine 37, and we get x is equal to 10.23. Take a screenshot of that. Save that for later. Okay. Make it a little smaller. So x is equal to approximately 10.23. Now, that's the length of a side of the triangle. That's not an angle. So that's just going to be, unless they have specific units in your problem, you don't put any units on that. Okay, the third type of problem is when x is in the denominator. So what we're going to want to do is multiply both sides by x to cancel the x on the left side. But now we have to get rid of the sine of 52 on the left, so we're going to divide both sides by sine of 52. So I'm just going to write this all in one step. So essentially, we're going to switch the sine of 52 with the x. So this becomes x equals 22 divided by sine of 52. It's really important that you understand the algebra behind this. So if you don't, kind of walk through that step by step if you need to. So I'm just going to grab the calculator and punch that in, and I'll have my answer. So we're going to have, I should have cleared that, 22 divided by sine of 52. There we go. Save that. Back to there. So we get about 27.92. And once again, that's going to be the length of the side, so we don't put degrees on that. Okay, so there's the three types of problems you need to understand how to do. There's three different places. Once you figure out how to write the equation with sine or cosine or tangent, your x can show up in one of three spots. And so this is how you solve for each of those different cases. So this is a good reference. You can go back and use that when you're working through the worksheet if you get stuck on anything. Alright, so worksheet 4 is your assignment, and that is set up in Schoology, and then you can upload that once you have completed it. And just to show you what it looks like, on the first side of the worksheet you're finding a missing side, so like we did in the opener, and then in the second one you're finding the missing angle. So once again you'll have to use the inverse sine or inverse cosine or inverse tangent. And now in this problem they give you all three sides. And so for example, we want to find the measure of angle U, so you're labeling your sides. And now you have your choice if you want to use sine or cosine or tangent, because you have all the information for any of those. So let's say you decide to use tangent. Remember, SOHCAHTOA. Tangent of angle U is going to be the opposite leg, which in this case was 18, over the adjacent leg, which was 24. And then go ahead and solve that like we just did in the examples. So U is going to equal the inverse tangent of 18 over 24. And then you grab your calculator and you go ahead and punch that in and you'll get your angle for U. So use the inverse trig functions for the second side, and you're just going to find lengths of sides for the first side. Okay.